All right, so today I wanted to showcase my new multimedia system out in the garage. I have an Apple Mac Mini computer running just to a regular HDMI screen mounted on the wall. I have a couple 6.5-inch coaxial speakers from CT Sounds. I've been ordering a lot of shit from them lately, love that shit. I got this Punch, I believe it's like a 120.2 from the early 2000 and aughts. I got a subwoofer, Polk Audio DB Super Classic from the 90s, 12-inch in a sealed enclosure under the workbench. That's being driven by a Punch 500A2, also from the late 90s. I got this mid-2010s Sony head unit. It's pretty basic, but a lot of this equipment came out of my old total daily driver, the Scion XB. Rest its soul. I went to Badham's Wood Shop and built these two speaker boxes out of 3/4-inch MDF. You can see that I made them huge. Normally for 6.5s you wouldn't make them that big, and you definitely don't have to. I really just wanted to see what a pair of 6.5s would sound like in a 1 cubic foot sealed enclosure. And honestly, the results were not great in my opinion. I thought that they sounded a bit thin and a bit lifeless. So I did end up porting the enclosures after the fact. I also built this kind of bench test box when I was at Brian's Wood Shop, because that houses a switch for the LED accent lighting. It houses the stereo itself. It also houses, and you can't see it from the front of the box, but inside there is a couple different power supplies. A big one to power the amps and the switched power of the head unit, and a small one that's constantly on that can power a switch for the accent LEDs as well as the memory on the head unit. That's why it's always on, so that it doesn't forget my EQ settings, my display settings, and all that different stuff. My uses for it are actually varied. I have friends over all the time when the weather's nice to play cards out here. We can jam out, listen to some music. We can watch TV, watch videos, whatever we want to do on the computer. The sound is great because it all runs through the stereo system I installed. When I'm out here working on projects, which is all the time, I can listen to my music, loving that. Also, running everything off of the computer wasn't just for the sake of saying I have a computer in my garage. I do a lot of automotive work out here, a lot of meticulous maintenance, as you guys know from my previous videos, a lot of custom performance stuff, a lot of little restoration projects. So it's great to be able to have the computer to look up torque specifications, technical procedures, my all data, YouTube, Google, run into a problem, get an answer without having to run inside and get my grimy hands all over the office computer. Another really specific purpose I have for this system is a little bit less fun and a little bit more practical, and that's to use it as a bench testing device, because I do a lot of custom automotive electronics, specifically custom sound systems. And if you're having any trouble with a custom sound system, I'm definitely the guy to come to work it out, because I use this multimedia system in my garage as a troubleshooting tool in that situation. That's to say that I can swap out in your signal chain. If you're having any trouble with your system, I can swap out my speakers for your speakers, not physically, just by wiring up your stuff to my equipment that's mounted to the wall and installed in the workbench. I can swap out your head unit for my head unit, your amps for my amps. I can isolate where the problem is, whether it's wiring, whether it's one of the components, really quickly and really easily using this as a tool. Another thing that I'm particularly proud of with this project is that my garage happens to be cinder block construction, which is great for a lot of things like insulation and sturdiness, but it makes cable management a real challenge, because like wherever your man cave or lady cave might be, if you had drywall or studs, it would be a lot easier to run a really clean wiring job on this. We would just hide it behind the drywall or throw some split loom on it and staple it up to the inside of the studs. So as you can see here, I used a couple different tricks, like these aluminum baffles that I made out of exterior trim material to hide some of the wiring and the source of the LED light up under the parts bin shelf. I went through a lot of plastic mollies, or anchors, some people call them. And that's pretty much how I sunk everything into the cinder blocks. And so the only wiring that really was able to be hidden is the wiring behind the test bench box, the wiring that is behind the amp wings, and the wiring that is up underneath the parts bin shelves. And then for the rest of the wiring, I just had to run it in a straight line, hide as much of it as I can behind the screen and the speaker boxes, and mount it to the wall so that it stays straight and looks orderly. I'm absolutely loving the results of my system now that it's fully installed and dialed in. I'm enjoying listening to music whenever I'm working on projects out here, having a little background music when my buddies are over. The bass, for a single 12 that's meant to be in a car, obviously it doesn't beat like it does in a car, but it's got more bass than your garage, I can guarantee you that. And the way that I tuned the boxes for the 6.5s with the ports, they make a nice full mid bass, so it's really balanced. Did a lot of experimenting, a little bit of research and development, if you will, turning this into a super functional, great sounding, great looking system. Could you use something like this in your garage, in your man cave, in your basement, in your entertainment room, whatever purposes you might have? Maybe you just want a stereo system and not the screen, not the computer. Maybe you want to set up like a gaming setup with surround sound in your garage or in your basement, but you want it installed all slick and badass and sort of, integrated into your interior design, if you will. If I was you, I would just steal my ideas, see how I did it, and do it myself, because that's how I do everything. But everyone's different. If you want me to do it for you, get a hold of me. Everything done right, babies.